It started like a small-town miracle. A wild predator, once feared and hunted, was found injured near the edge of Red Willow Forest. Bloodied, weak, and barely alive, the animal lay in the ditch like it had given up. Most would have left it there, assuming it was too dangerous or beyond saving. But not Emma. Emma Jensen wasn't the kind of person to turn away from something or someone in need. She worked at the local vet clinic, but her compassion extended far beyond the job. She'd once raised an abandoned raccoon back to health, even though her neighbors said it was a terrible idea. So when she saw the creature in the ditch, barely breathing and shaking from blood loss, she didn't hesitate. At first glance, it looked like a wolf, but something about it was off. The eyes were a little too intelligent, the fur darker than she'd ever seen, and its presence felt unnervingly still. Even when she approached, it didn't growl or bare its teeth. It just looked at her. Not with fear, not with aggression, just awareness, like it understood, against every voice of caution ringing in her head, and despite the few passing cars honking as they saw her kneel beside the beast, Emma lifted the predator into her car. She wrapped it in the old plaid blanket she kept in the trunk and whispered words she wasn't sure the creature could even hear. She didn't know why she was doing it. Something just told her she had to. The animal didn't resist. It didn't snap or fight, even when the vet tech at the clinic refused to help. Emma had to treat it on her own, after hours, under the flickering light in the back room where they usually kept the rescue kittens. It took hours of stitching, disinfecting, and care, but the animal survived the night. Word spread fast in their small town. Some thought she was crazy. Others called her brave. But Emma didn't care. She wasn't doing it for attention. She wasn't even sure she was doing it for the animal. It felt like something bigger was happening, like she'd stepped into something. She didn't fully understand yet. They named the creature Mercy. Emma said it was ironic. Saving a predator was an act of mercy, but also a kind of gamble. And maybe a warning. Over the next few weeks, Mercy healed faster than expected. Too fast, some said. The gash on its side closed within days, and the limp disappeared by the end of the week. Emma chalked it up to a strong immune system. But deep down, even she knew something about this recovery wasn't natural. The more time she spent with Mercy, the more she noticed strange behaviors. It didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't react to loud noises or strangers the way a wild animal should. It studied people, watched them with eerie calm. Sometimes it would sit completely still, staring into the trees for hours, as if waiting for something or someone. Then the dreams started. Emma would wake in the middle of the night, covered in sweat, images of dark forests and glowing eyes burned into her mind. Sometimes she'd see Mercy in them, standing like a shadow beside her. Other times she swore she heard whispers, words she didn't understand but somehow felt familiar. Her friends began to worry. Mark, a teacher from down the road who'd known Emma since high school, told her she needed to let the animal go. "It's not a dog, Em," he said one afternoon, watching Mercy pace by the porch. "It's a predator. They don't change just because you gave it a name." But it had changed, hadn't. And Emma didn't see the threat everyone else did. To her, Mercy had become part of her life. She ate next to it, slept near it, walked with it through the woods behind her cabin every morning. And for all the unease it stirred in others, it had never hurt anyone. Not once, until the hiker disappeared. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the news came through. A tourist from the city, hiking alone through the North Trail, vanished without a trace. No signs of struggle, no blood, just an abandoned backpack and a shattered phone screen near the river bend. People panicked. The forest was closed off, search parties were formed, and whispers started again. Whispers about the animal Emma brought back from the dead. She denied it, of course. Mercy was with her the entire night. She even had video from her porch camera showing the creature sleeping by her steps. But the doubt had already taken root in the minds of her neighbors. Fear grows fast when there are no answers. Then the second person vanished. This time it was closer, just outside town. Another tourist. Same pattern, no signs of a fight. just silence. And, in that silence, Emma began to feel it too, that pull in the pit of her stomach, that cold, sinking realization that maybe, just maybe, she didn't save a predator. Maybe she had invited it in. She started doing research. Hours spent online reading obscure wildlife reports, tribal legends, old missing person cases from areas around Red Willow Forest. A pattern began to form. There had been similar disappearances in the past, always dismissed, always isolated, but always near deep woods, always after strange sightings. And in nearly every case, someone had reported seeing a creature with eyes that didn't belong to any known animal. Emma didn't want to believe it. But one night, just after 2 a.m., she heard something outside her window. Not a growl, not a scratch, a whisper. She stepped onto the porch and found Mercy sitting upright, perfectly still, staring toward the trees. And for the first time since she found it, Emma was afraid. Not because it bared its teeth or made a sudden move, but because it looked at her like it understood everything she'd just realized. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came, and Mercy tilted its head, just slightly, as if to say, "You already know." The next morning, Emma was gone, her car still in the driveway, lights on in the kitchen, coffee still warm on the table. And Mercy was gone too. But sightings of a black-furred creature walking beside a human figure deep in the forest began to surface days later. Some say Emma went mad. Others think she ran off. But a few, those who remember the look in the creature's eyes, believe something else, that what she thought was an act of mercy was the beginning of something far more dangerous. And the question now is, what happens when the predator no longer hides? What happens when it walks among us, not as a beast, but as a pet? And who really is in control? The story doesn't end here. In fact, it's only just begun. 2 weeks passed with no sign of Emma. The police searched her home, combed the woods, and even dragged parts of the river. Her friends posted her photo everywhere, online, around town, even taped to trees at the trailhead. Still, nothing. Not even a footprint. But in a town like Millersfield, silence never stays quiet for long. People started talking. Some whispered about Mercy and the strange bond Emma had with the animal. Others recalled the day she brought it in, saying they knew something was wrong from the start. A few even claimed they had seen it. Something dark, fast, and too large to be a regular animal, moving through the trees at night. Mark tried to ignore it at first. He didn't want to believe the worst. He kept telling himself Emma would walk through his classroom door any day, teasing him about how he worried too much. But the longer she was gone, the more the weight settled in his chest. So one evening, after the sun had dipped behind the pines and the town began closing its doors for the night, Mark found himself standing on Emma's porch. The air felt heavier there, the kind of stillness that makes your skin itch. He tried. The front door. Locked. The windows were fogged up from the inside. He stepped around back and saw the feeding bowls she used for Mercy. One was still full. The other had been knocked over, dry and dusty. Something told him not to go in, but he did anyway. Inside, the cabin felt like time had stopped. The couch was still a mess of blankets. Books were scattered across the coffee table, some open too. Pages about animal behavior and predator instincts. Her laptop was dead, but beside it was a worn notebook, her handwriting rough, hurried, pages filled with odd notes. Not natural, one line read. Another said, "It watches in ways I can't explain." And under that, "What if it's not just an animal?" Mark flipped through more pages. One had a crude drawing, just a sketch of 2 eyes, hollow and wide, staring straight ahead. Underneath it she had written, "They don't blink." He stepped back, the floor creaking under his feet. For a second, he thought he heard something upstairs. A thud, soft but distinct. He held his breath. Nothing. He grabbed the notebook, turned off the light, and left. That night, he couldn't sleep. He read every page of Emma's notes under the soft yellow glow of his desk lamp. She had been researching legends, stories from Native tribes that spoke of creatures that walked between worlds, shapeshifters, spirits of the forest. Some took animal form, others were said to mimic people. But all of them shared one thing: they fed on fear. Not in a violent, messy way, in a quiet, methodical way. They watched, learned, and waited. It sounded like nonsense, folklore, but it didn't explain how Emma vanished, or why Mercy had healed so quickly, or why in one of the final entries she wrote, "I don't think I saved it. I think it let me believe I did." Mark tried to shake the feeling creeping up his spine. He closed the notebook, stood up, and walked to the window. The night outside was dark, the kind that swallows everything. No wind, no crickets, just the hum of silence. Then he saw it. Something moved near the tree line across the field. Not fast, not threatening, just walking. 4 legs, then 2, then gone. He blinked, heart pounding. Told himself it was just his mind playing tricks. Stress, no sleep. But the next day, he wasn't the only one who saw something. Mrs. Halverson, the elderly woman who lived just off the old railway road, called the sheriff's office, claimed she saw Emma, alive, walking through the woods behind her house, but not alone. She had it with her, she said, voice trembling. That thing. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't no dog. They brushed it off as confusion. She was 82 after all and had a long history of strange claims. But others started seeing things too. Hunters, campers, hikers, always the same story: a woman with wild hair and tired eyes, walking calmly through the trees, and beside her a dark creature that didn't make a sound. People began avoiding the forest. Trails were closed permanently, signs were posted: "Do not enter, active wildlife zone." But that didn't stop the rumors. Especially the ones that claimed Emma wasn't just alive, she had changed. Some believed she was possessed. Others thought she'd become one of those things she'd been researching, but most people just avoided the conversation entirely. Safer that way. Still, Mark couldn't let it go. He felt responsible somehow, like he should have seen it sooner, like he should have stopped her before she brought that thing home. He returned to the forest one afternoon with the notebook, hoping to retrace her steps, maybe find a clue, maybe get some peace. The deeper he went, the quieter it got. No birds, no squirrels, just leaves crunching under his boots and the sound of his own breath. He found the clearing where Emma used to take Mercy for walks. There was an old bench there, half rotted and covered in moss. Beside it, the dirt was disturbed. Something or someone had knelt there recently. He looked around. That's when he saw the claw marks on a nearby tree. Deep, wide, and fresh. He backed, away slowly. And then, from the corner of his eye, movement. He turned. Nothing. But he felt it. That same feeling Emma described in her notes. Watched, studied, measured. He left the forest without looking back. That night he started locking his doors. He kept the lights on. He even bought a motion-activated camera for his porch. It went off 3 times over the next week. But when he checked the footage, there was never anything there. Until the 4th time. That night, the camera caught something. A shadow. Tall. Not quite human. Not quite animal. Standing perfectly still at the edge of the porch, just outside the light. Watching, and standing beside it, barely visible but unmistakable, was a woman with tangled hair and hollow eyes. Emma. She didn't knock, didn't move. After a few minutes, they both vanished into the dark. Mark never showed the footage to the police. He deleted it the next morning. He knew no one would believe it. And maybe deep down he didn't want them to, because if Emma was truly gone, and something else had taken her place, then the real question wasn't what Mercy was anymore. It was what Emma had become, and more importantly, who or what had really brought Mercy into our world. The forest wasn't just hiding a predator, it was sheltering something older, smarter, and far more patient than anyone had ever imagined. And the worst part, it had already learned how to live among us. Mark wasn't the only one who had started noticing things. Across town, Deputy Carla Reyes had been quietly tracking the strange reports piling up over the last few months. She didn't believe in folklore or forest spirits, but she believed in patterns, and something wasn't right in Millersfield. Too many missing persons reports with no leads. Too many calls from locals claiming to see figures standing in the woods at night. The official line from the department was wildlife activity and unreliable witnesses. But Carla knew that was just a way to keep panic from spreading. She'd grown up here, knew these people. They weren't the type to exaggerate. And they were scared. Carla had once dismissed Emma's story about the predator, thought it was noble, maybe even a little reckless, but harmless. People rescue wild animals all the time. But now, standing in front of her corkboard filled with blurry trail cam photos, maps, and handwritten notes, she wasn't so sure. Each photo showed something, barely visible in the background, too tall, too still, too shadowed, and always near one of the locations tied to a disappearance. She couldn't prove it was the same creature, but her instincts screamed that it was. The same animal Emma had taken in, the one some now called Mercy. And then there was Emma herself. Carla had known her since college. Emma was grounded, smart, and empathetic to a fault. Not the kind of person who'd run off. And definitely not someone who would let people vanish without trying to help, which made her sudden silence feel all the more chilling. What if she wasn't silent by choice? That thought had kept Carla up more than once. Meanwhile, back in town, things were starting to fray. Local businesses near the edge of the forest saw fewer customers. The diner emptied earlier each night. Parents kept their kids indoors. Even the high school postponed its annual camping trip. But rumors filled the vacuum fear created. Teenagers dared each other to walk the trail behind Miller's Creek after dark. Some claimed to have seen glowing eyes. One boy, Jared, 16, said he saw Emma standing in the trees behind his house, watching him through the window. His mother found him locked in his room the next morning, shaking, refusing to speak for hours. His story spread fast, but no one could prove it. While the town grew more uneasy, Mark couldn't stop thinking about what Emma had written in her notes. He kept reading them over and over, looking for something he missed. Then one night, buried in the final few pages, he noticed something strange. Coordinates. Just numbers scribbled between lines of restless handwriting. He punched them into his phone. They pointed to a place deep in Red Willow Forest, a section long closed to the public. No trails, no ranger stations, just wilderness. Mark didn't tell anyone. He didn't want more eyes on the situation. And honestly, he wasn't even sure what he hoped to find. But something kept pulling at him. Guilt, curiosity, maybe both. He packed a flashlight, the notebook, a first aid kit, and headed out just after dawn the next day. The hike took hours. The trees grew thicker, the path less clear, but eventually he found a clearing surrounded by tall pines. It was completely silent. In the middle stood a stone formation, like a crude circle, half covered in moss and leaves. Inside the circle were markings, etched into the rock, old and nearly worn away. Mark took photos. He crouched down, brushing leaves aside, trying to make sense of them, and then he heard it. Footsteps. Slow, measured. He turned, heart pounding. Nothing. But the air changed, got colder, thicker, and in that stillness, something moved between the trees. A flash of black fur, the briefest glimpse of a human figure. He called out, "Emma?" No answer. Only silence. He didn't wait to see more. He backed away fast, the hairs on his arms standing up. Whatever he'd stumbled onto, he wasn't supposed to be there. That night, he sent the photos to Carla anonymously. She recognized the symbols. Back at the station, she dug through old town records. Buried beneath decades of logging contracts and land surveys, she found something, an archived report from the 1930s. It mentioned strange symbols found in the same part of the forest. Locals at the time called it a watcher's ground, a place they warned children to stay away from. The report had been dismissed, filed under rural superstition, but it was there. The symbols matched the ones in Mark's photos. And then she saw the names of 2 park rangers listed on the report. Both had gone missing 6 months after it was written. Carla knew she had to talk to Mark. She hadn't told anyone she was digging into the case, especially not the department. But if he was in that deep, they needed to compare what they knew. Only she never got the chance. That morning, Mark's phone was found on the trail just outside the forest boundary. The screen was cracked, the case scuffed, and the last photo, on it showed a shadow between 2 trees. Not a clear figure, not a face, but something tall, watching. He was nowhere to be found. The town's fear turned to full-blown paranoia. The sheriff issued a formal warning to stay out of the forest. Drones were flown overhead. Nothing unusual was found, but people kept hearing things, seeing shapes, getting that same gut feeling that something was just beyond their vision. And in the evenings, Mercy was seen again, sometimes alone, sometimes with a figure beside it, not attacking, not running, just watching, always watching. And now people started wondering, what if the creature didn't take Emma? What if Emma never left? What if she became part of it, became something else? It sounded impossible, but so did a predator that walks beside humans without chains. So did vanishing into the woods without a trace. So did everything that had happened since Emma found that dying creature on the side of the road. Some believed the creature chose Emma for a reason. Others feared it wasn't just one creature at all, that it was part of something older, a presence hiding in the woods long before Millersfield was ever built, a presence now awakened, but no one knew for sure, and no one dared go looking, because now it wasn't just about what lived in the forest, it was about what the forest had let out. Weeks passed, and the fear in Millersfield slowly settled into something quieter, something like denial. People stopped talking about the forest. The sheriff's warnings faded from the bulletin board, and though the missing posters for Emma and Mark were still taped to shop windows, most folks had started to look past them, like the edges of a dream you want to forget. But not everyone moved on. Deputy Carla Reyes stayed restless. Every night she drove past the tree line, headlights washing over the edge of the woods, hoping to see something, anything, that might bring closure. She'd stopped talking about the case at work. Too many side eyes, too many jokes about ghost stories. But she knew what she saw in Mark's last photo. That shape wasn't human. It wasn't just a trick of the light, and deep down she also knew Emma wasn't lost. She was changed. Then one early morning, just before dawn, Carla found something at the edge of her porch, a notebook, Emma's, weather-worn, edges curled from damp. But it was the same one Mark had mentioned. She flipped it open. There were new entries. The handwriting was shakier, messier, like it had been written fast, maybe in the dark. One page stood out. It read, "It doesn't want to hurt anyone, but it doesn't understand people the way we do. It learns by watching. It thought I saved it. Maybe I did, but it saved me too." Another page said, "Mark is alive. It kept him here. It's trying to show him what it sees. He's fighting it, but I think he understands now. This place, it's not evil, just forgotten. And now it remembers." Carla turned to the final page. A simple message. "Don't come looking. For us. We're where we're supposed to be." There was no signature. She stared at those words for a long time, then looked up toward the woods where the sun was beginning to rise. Light spilled across the trees, and for the first time in months, the forest looked peaceful. Not threatening, just still. She didn't tell anyone about the notebook. She placed it in a drawer in her kitchen and left it there. And just like that, the quiet returned to Millersfield. The town reopened the lower trails by late spring. Tourists came through again, taking photos of the tall pines, unaware of the stories buried in the roots. A new vet took over Emma's clinic and business picked up. People smiled more, they laughed again, but every now and then someone would swear they saw her, Emma, walking along the ridge above town, her figure barely visible through the trees. Sometimes, they said, there was something beside her, not on a leash, not trailing behind, just walking next to her, step for step. Some said it was a wolf, others thought it was a shadow. A few swore it stood upright, but no one ever followed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was respect. Because whatever had happened out there, whatever Emma had become, she wasn't hurting anyone. And neither was the creature. The disappearances had stopped. The strange sightings faded. And the forest, for the most part, kept its silence. Carla, though, never stopped thinking about that line in the notebook. It learns by watching. She wondered how long it had been watching before Emma found it, and how long it might keep watching. Now. Maybe it had been here for centuries. Maybe it had been alone, waiting for someone who didn't run, someone who saw it not as a monster, but something more. Maybe that's all it needed. Not fear. Not power, just understanding. And maybe Emma, for all her kindness and curiosity, was the first one to truly see it. The story of Emma and the creature people once called Mercy eventually became just that. A story. Something people whispered about after too many drinks. A tale parents mentioned when telling their kids not to wander too far from the trail. The truth faded, piece by piece, as the years passed. But Carla remembered, and every spring, she left a small offering at the edge of the woods, a gesture she read about in one of Emma's books. Not a sacrifice, just respect. A way of saying, "We see you." She never saw Emma again. Not clearly. But one morning, years later, a child walking through the trail found a smooth stone placed on the bench in the old clearing. On it, carved so faint, it was almost missed, were the words, "Still learning." That child brought the stone to his teacher. The story made its way around town, and for a brief moment, people remembered again. The woman who disappeared, the creature that wasn't just a predator, the forest that might not be empty after all. But the fear didn't return. Instead, a strange calm settled in, as if the town, in its own quiet way, had made peace with whatever lived beyond the pines. In the end, Emma didn't need saving, and maybe neither did the creature, because mercy, real mercy, isn't about taming something wild. It's about choosing to understand it and letting it choose you in return.